Hey everyone, how's it going and welcome back. What flowers to sow in June? Well, on today's episode of Niall Gardens, I'm going to share with you 10 great flowers that you can grow from seed this month to bring colour and scent into your garden, including one seed that if you sow nothing else, you have to sow this. Let's jump straight into this month's seeds, but a quick reminder, just bear in mind your own local growing conditions as they may well be slightly different or a lot different to mine. And don't worry about writing down all of these plant recommendations either. You can find my seed lists over at my website, niallgardens.com, and in the description down below. Now, June really is the time to be sowing biennials. In a nutshell, biennials are plants that grow this year, flower next year, then set seed and die, a 2-year life cycle. And my first biennial recommendation are these, Foxgloves. They germinate so quickly and easily, and they're incredibly simple to grow. I usually sow mine in a seed tray and then pop them on into pots, but at this time of year, you can simply sow them by directly scattering them onto the soil in drifts. They'll grow this year, and next year you'll have gorgeous flowers like this. They're nice, aren't they? And they come in so many different colours. Whites like this with lovely purple speckling, purples, pinks, and you can even get rusty orange colours and pure white versions as well. So take your pick. But if you're looking for something that little bit smaller in size and something that once you have it in your garden, you'll never get rid of it, then how about these forget-me-nots? So these are a perfect example of a plant that I actually never particularly liked until I had them in my own garden. And now I've got to say that I love them. They pop up all over the place, in beds, in amongst plants, like here, in amongst these black irises, under hedges, in all sorts of corners. But I think that that little hit of bright blue just looks great amongst all of the colours of spring. The flowers are just starting to fade at this time of year and the seed heads are beginning to develop. So they're a perfect example of a plant where you can easily collect the seed yourself. Or even better, just pull out a stalk and when the seeds are ripe, shake it around the area where you want the plants. Trust me, they will appear. Although they're generally classed as perennials, hollyhocks are short-lived perennials, so I'm going to treat them as biennials like many people do. Much like foxgloves, they give you these beautiful vertical spires of flower in just so many colours. Reds, whites, yellows, pinks, purples, even really dark black colours. So the choice is endless. They're a really versatile plant. You can put them all over your garden. They're going to give you that really high impact look, but best of all, they're really easy to grow. Sow them now. They'll germinate really quickly for you. Then all you need to do is pop them on, bring them on to a decent size and get them planted out in the garden. And next year, all being well, you'll have some really lovely hollyhock flowers. This is the bit of the monthly seed sowing episodes that I really love. It's time for my one seed that if you sow nothing else, you have to sow this. All this year, I'm getting some truly top YouTube gardeners to help me with their own recommendations. And this month, I've asked a really experienced gardener for her pick. It's Alexandra from her channel, TheMiddlesizedGarden.
Hi Niall, and thank you for inviting me to say what one seed I'd sow in June. It would be wallflowers. I sowed them once in June and I was so grateful the following spring because they're great with tulips and they're great in winter pots and they really do add lasting colour. And the great advantage of sowing them from seed is that you can choose the colour you want, rather than having to rely on what you can get at the garden centres, which is often a sort of dolly mixture of mixed colours. I regard myself as a journalist, really, more even than a gardener. And so on The Middle-Sized Garden, I always research everything quite carefully. So when you asked me about one seed to sow in June, and I thought about wallflowers, I did check on a number of sites that June was a good month to sow them in. And quite a lot of people also said April and May. So I bought a packet of wallflower seeds, and on the back of the packet, it said, sow in late summer. Now, your June, depending on where you all are in the world, your June is probably not the same as my by June, but I don't think there's anywhere where June could be described as late summer. Anyway, I did some more research, and yes, it's fine to plant wallflowers in June. You grow them through the year and then they'll be ready for the next spring. But it did make me realise that actually there's a lot more flexibility in this than you might think. But the one bit of advice I've had from avid seed sowers is just sow a few seeds. Don't sow them all at once. So I'll sow a few seeds in June and I will keep some for late summer. And I really look forward to having beautiful wallflowers next spring. So thank you, Niall, and back to you again.
Almost every year I end up buying my bare root wallflower plants rather than growing them from seed so that I can plant them amongst my spring bulbs. But this year I am definitely going to be sowing some of my own. Alexandra really is a plantswoman, and her channel is just great for tips, inspiration and advice. If you're not already subscribed to The Middle-Sized Garden, I'll leave a link up above and also in the description down below. Thanks so much, Alexandra. Check these out, aren't they just beautiful? These are Aquilegia and they come in a whole host of different colours and flower forms, and you can sow them now. The ones I've got here in the garden are, well, lovely pale pinky purples, bluey purples and whites. They make for a lovely late spring flower that for me has it all. Perfect colour, a nice little bit of height. You can see that these are probably about 2.5 to 3 foot tall, pleasant foliage and just such an interesting flower form. These are perennial, so they're going to come back year after year, but they'll also readily self-seed around. So you're going to have more and more each year, which when it comes to Aquilegia, I think is a really good thing. If you're subscribed to the channel, you'll know that I covered Iceland poppies back in February. In fact, it was actually Erica from Erica's Little Welsh Gardens recommendation of her one seed to sow that if you sow nothing else. Well, if you didn't get a chance to sow them that early, you can sow your Iceland or Icelandic poppies now. The best thing about sowing them now though, is that you can simply direct sow them outdoors because the soil has had a chance to warm up. They have the most delicate, papery, wafer-thin flowers in pale yellows, oranges and corals. Because they're being sown that little bit later in the season, they may not flower this year, but they're hardy perennials, so they can establish this year for a lovely display next year. Right, I'm going to break my own rules now because I've got a whole host of annuals that are obviously going to push me over my 10 flowers for this month. But you know what? Who cares? I want to suggest things that are actually going to grow and will deliver flowers for you. And there are still a few annuals which you can start now, which are going to grow really quickly and could mean that you get some nice later summer colour or even early autumn flowers. So are you ready? Because I'm going to hit you with the list. Nasturtiums, calendula or pot marigold, nigella or love in a mist, zinnias and limanthes or the poached eggplant. Now, I've talked about all of these with the exception of the poached eggplant in previous What Flowers to Sow This Month episodes, so head across to my channel page and check out those videos for more in-depth information on all of them. And while you're at it, check out my video on how to grow your own lilies. Check out how well these are getting on. Now, if those last seeds were catch-up flowers, my next suggestion is all about getting ahead of time. Winter pansies. It's great having strong, tough plants that are stalwarts in the garden during winter, but if wallflowers deliver in spring, winter flowering pansies give you colour and interest during the winter. Granted, they might be considered a little bit pedestrian, but there's a lot to be said for a little plant that's going to work perfectly in beds and borders, containers, window boxes, and pretty much anywhere that you put it. They flower their hearts out, and there's not much more you can ask for in the cold of winter. Get sowing them now, and then you can enjoy your virtuous organisedness later. Poppies, whether annual or perennial Oriental poppies, are great to sow now. Poppies don't particularly like root disturbance, which means that direct sowing is the best way to grow them. They also look great in drifts, so again, direct sowing is the way to go. Because of this, they're great gap fillers in the garden. Growing quickly in warm soils and the gentle weather that we get in late spring, they're going to give you some seriously bright splashes of colour. When it comes to annual poppies, you don't even need to worry about supporting or staking them. They're going to be perfect just as they are. And like forget-me-nots, poppies are prolific seed producers and are a great starter plant if you want to try your hand at some of your own seed saving. So there you have it, 10 brilliant flowers that you can sow this month. Get sowing, get growing, and enjoy those beautiful blooms. But remember, June is a great time to be sowing your own vegetable seeds, no matter how much or how little space or growing experience you have. And this video here will show you exactly the best things to sow and grow in June. And until next time, see you later.